Darling, let me tell you about Bruno. My tragic, delightful sex idiot. He's as muscled as a frescoed cherub and precisely as intelligent. His every utterance is an aria of incomprehensible power talk, some bizarre dialect of testosterone and monosyllables. Grunts, roars, push through the burn. What burn, darling? The man communicates like a protein shake that's just discovered vowels. And yet, there I was in a dimension that felt like an unfinished painting. Somewhere between Magritte's preposterous skies and Kandinsky's spasms of colour and chaos, reality there was a slippery thing, a smear of shapes that couldn't quite decide what they wanted to be. A staircase spiralled upward into the breast of a cloud. A crescent moon floated half-submerged in a pool of ink. Bruno stood at the centre of it all, his body a glistening monument to brute force, his head cocked like an empty and forgotten piece of crockery. "What's the strategy, Helena?" he barked, his voice reverberating like a gong struck in a hall of mirrors. Strategy! As though I had a battle plan for the likes of him. And then he charged at me, this living marble slab, this erotic wrecking ball. We collided like tectonic plates and, the landscape quaked. Darling, it was violent. A cubist tango of limbs and impulses. His hands were all at once anvils and feathers, dismantling me piece by trembling piece. He spun me into shapes I did not know my body could inhabit. At one point, I was certain I had become a trapezoid. He painted bruises on me with broad, brutish strokes, as though I were his canvas and agony his art. And when he spoke, oh, his words, pure nonsense. Dominate the quadrant. Activate the core. Stack gains. Gains. I've no earthly idea what he meant, but I nodded, moaned, and begged for more. At one point, he lifted me like I was weightless, an origami crane folded into submission. I flailed beautifully, of course, a damsel undone by his geometric cruelty. He slammed me against a wall that wasn't there, and yet I felt it, the texture of its impossibility against my skin. I dissolved into angles, reduced to some surreal assemblage of passion and pain, all at the mercy of this absurdly sculpted man. And yet, there were moments, brief, flickering moments, when I saw something in his eyes. Not intelligence, mind you. That would be asking far too much. But sincerity. Yes, that's it. A pure, almost childlike joy as he shattered me like glass. His grin was that of a boy pulling wings off a butterfly, but somehow endearing. Do you know, once he even called me brilliant? Well, his word was, quote-unquote, tight. Tight meaning brilliant. And oh, the aftermath, darling. We lay there entangled in a mess of broken geometry and perspiration, the air thick with the smell of paint thinner, I think, or perhaps regret. Bruno looked at me with something approaching admiration, his chest heaving like an unfinished symphony. "You're tight," he said, which I took as a compliment, though I'm certain it was meant as a post-workout assessment. And I told him he was sublime. Because really, what else could he be? A sublime idiot. My idiot. My sex idiot. But you know what's funny, darling? Just before I left, as I slipped back into my dress, smoothing its fabric over the constellation of bruises he'd left behind, I caught him looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite place. Was it pity? No, amusement, perhaps? And then it struck me. In his eyes, I was the idiot. The fool in this surrealist farce. His sex idiot. Me! Can you imagine? But, of course, he's wrong, isn't he? Surely I'm the clever one here. After all, I'm the one telling the story.